Friedrich Nietzsche, the great German philosopher, once mentioned that there are no eternal facts just as there are no eternal truths. This highlights a fundamental tenet of postmodern thought, that there is no objective truth. Postmodernists would say that meta-narratives, or in other words, narratives that try to claim objective truth or say that they understand the reality of the world, are fundamentally false, because objective truth simply is not a thing. We have our subjective understandings of what is real, of what is true, but nothing that can be claimed to be a fact is really in and of itself true. Rather, people are subjected to the context that they are in, and they have their own subjective reasons as to why they believe in a certain thing. Now, of course, this raises a very fundamental paradox at the heart of postmodernism. The claim that there is no objective truth. Is that an objective truth? If it is, then it invalidates the first premise. And if it isn't, then there's no reason for us to believe in this tenet of postmodernism. Hence, this paradox at the heart and the essence of postmodern thought, which is very difficult to solve, and one which leads to a lot of philosophical issues for the postmodernist. But what if there is a solution to this? I was reading a book of Friedrich Nietzsche, Beyond Good and Evil, and it was the Cambridge edition of that work, more specifically. And in that work, the editor mentioned something very useful, which was that although, reading Nietzsche's thought, or let's say the postmodern thought on this idea of there being no objective truth, seems to come across as rather absurd, what we can do is read this in a more socio-hermeneutical manner. What that means is that we can read this in the context, or on the basis that what Nietzsche or what postmodernists, generally speaking, are describing when they are saying that there is no objective truth is not necessarily a philosophical or epistemological claim, but rather it's the claim that people are based within their subjective contexts. And because everybody is based in their own unique context when they say certain things or claim certain things, we cannot truly understand the full context or the full picture of a situation or event or a truth, quote unquote, when it arises or when it is true. As such, we do not always know the full picture of the context or reality in which that truth is contingent in, but we know partially, or we know an approximation to that truth. This highlights something very important then, that whilst we don't necessarily need to read it philosophically, we can read this postmodern tenet that is very crucial to the postmodern ideology. We can read this in a socio-hermeneutic manner rather than in an objective manner. This solves a number of issues, most importantly the paradox, but by reading this as socio-hermeneutically, it allows us to retain the analysis and the social deconstruction project that sort of postmodernity can offer, and it allows us to go through the various meta-narratives that are present, whether religions, ideologies, political ideologies, etc. It allows us to deconstruct them and understand the context, which is the most important thing, which that ideology was based in, and hence how those ideas and how that ideology came to be. And by this analysis, it helps us to understand the history and the development of said ideologies. And so we don't have to say that there is no objective truth, but rather we can approach truths or facts with skepticism and a healthy dosage of doubt that is healthy in all discourse and in all conversation. One interesting attempt to reconcile the skepticism of postmodernism with modernism's insistence on, let's say, science is the meta-modern or the metamodernism project, which retains science's belief in science but maintains the kind of skepticism that postmodernism has. In my channel and in my past videos, I've attempted to reconcile the modernity's emphasis on science, on natural science, and sort of experimental based observation with the pre-modern emphasis on, let's say, classical metaphysics and philosophy and this kind of more abstract thinking. In a similar way, we can definitely reconcile modern thought, or let's say modern scientific thought, with certain aspects of postmodernity by reading the claim of the postmodernists that there is no objective truth in a socio-hermeneutic manner, which allows us to analyze things from a historical and social perspective, to deconstruct certain narratives, and to evaluate the context in which those things were developed and the subjective human experiences of the people involved, without having to go to the extent or the absurd conclusion that there is no objective truth whatsoever. In that sense, we can reconcile this tenet of postmodernism with modernity as well.